The majority of the nation's landlords are individual investors, many of whom have not been paid rent for up to 18 months. Reports suggest that over 6 million households are behind on paying rent. But who cares about those landlords? Who cares about all of the hard work, saved capital, and delayed gratification that all these hardworking American citizens put in to have the money set aside to not only purchase and or rent their own home, cover all their expenses, take care of themselves and their family, save up money to invest, to then go and purchase an additional home, shoulder additional risk to provide a product and service of a nice place to live that another human being chooses to live in on their own free will and is willing to stay in because they provide the repairs, because they provide the property, because they enjoy it and like it. Who cares about them and all of the hard work and time that they had to put in to have an additional home that they are able to rent for a very slim margin? Can you imagine how gut-wrenching it has to be to own an investment property and then have the several $100s that you may make per month in profit in your rent get completely eviscerated in the year that you need a new roof, in the year that you need plumbing repairs, window repairs, a paint job on the outside of the house, maybe new landscaping, maybe a broken sidewalk, or any other potential risks that come along with owning a home? It's not just collecting cash. This is a very difficult and risky business that millions of people have chosen to do as a way to build wealth for themselves. You know how difficult that is for most people? Most landlords are not large, massive corporations. They're individual mom and pops, your mom and dad, your friend's mom and dad, your neighbor down the street. It's not these massive corporations. In addition to the difficulties and risks that come with purchasing a second home, like having all of the money set aside so you can put the down payment, competing with other buyers, including institutional buyers, to not only find the home, but bid on it, have a price that arduous process where you have to continue paying all the expenses and you have to wait for that person to be evicted. It's very difficult and challenging and can totally make somebody that is a landlord be very disheartened by the process. Most people don't even understand that if a landlord misses sometimes even 2, maybe even 3 months of rent, all of their profits for the entire year can be wiped out. For example, if you have a renter that decides to move out on November 1st, not a lot of people are looking to rent between November 1st and January 1st. You're basically Scrooged for those 2 months, which means you have nobody paying rent in November and December. You can lose thousands of dollars from that. Even if there's 2 months or 3 months that your apartment goes vacant, you can lose all of your profit for the entire year. For example, you may rent an apartment for $2,000 a month. The mortgage on that house may be $1,200 a month. Additional expenses that may come up along the year and other carrying costs, you may walk away with $500 of profit. $500 of profit by 12 months is only $6,000. A new roof for that same exact house could cost $8,000, $9,000. You lose a year of profits just in one pop. And every single house needs a new roof every 10 to 15 years. So it's not like this expense might come. It's not like if you might get hit by a meteor. These expenses come. You have to factor that in. If you have this place go unrented for several months, you can be in big trouble fast. Now, a person that decides to buy a second home, specifically a mom and pop investor, or a person like you or me that is able to save and set aside enough money to shoulder the risk and cost of 2 mortgages, the amount of time and effort it takes to save up that second payment, not be privy to the same tax benefits that come from it being your investment property or supposedly your second home, not the home that you live in. The amount of time and effort that it takes to do that and the risk that it takes to do that, that's a lot of saved capital. That's a lot of delayed gratification. You could have bought a new car or taken a vacation or invested more money into clothing or watches or purses or whatever. But instead, you believe that cash flow, long-term investment, and building up your wealth was more important in the long term. You delayed gratification with all the money that you worked so hard for. That's what most of these people have done to get these properties. So now, out of completely left field, something you probably could have never anticipated, here comes this clam dem. You may have lost your job. Your family members may have lost their job. Your kids may be home from school and you have to figure out a way to take care of them. You may have lost your income stream. And then after all of that, after you're getting punished just like everybody else, and maybe you make more than 75K last year, so you get punished by not receiving any stimmies. You're left financially strapped because you're just over that threshold. And they can just sit in your apartment and not work for 18 months and not pay you a dime. Meanwhile, you have to keep paying all the expenses and covering all those costs yourself. And as those people get paid unemployment benefits, get paid to not work their job, get paid to just exist and sit at home in the apartment that they're not paying you rent on, as they don't pay their student loans, as they're behind on every payment, you have to watch them go and purchase new things, buy a new pair of shoes, buy a new cell phone, in some cases buy a new car, look it up. You have to watch them sit in your apartment and not pay you rent as you watch the world start to open again. And then when it finally comes to the end, when it finally comes to the last point where this moratorium finally ends, what happens next? As you sit there finally thinking that you may get some financial relief for all of the hard work and money that you saved and delayed gratification that came along with you finding and investing this property, you have to watch the most financially unaware, woke, virtue signaling person on the planet, Alexandria Ocasio-Clueless, sit on the steps of the Capitol building and say on a videotape that eviction is violence. Violence. This woman said that out of her face, that eviction is violence. You have to sit there and listen to these people, including Cori Bush, suggest that housing is a human right. These people do not understand what words mean. They are manipulating your emotions by using words like using phrases like housing is a human right and eviction is violence to emotionally manipulate you so that you change your belief structure, so that you feel sad. They pull at your heartstrings to get you to believe something that is categorically not true. Here's a newsflash. Housing is not a human right. Absolutely nobody has the right to demand products or services from another human being by force. That's not what rights are. And as Ocasio and Cori Bush stood on the Capitol steps calling their Democratic colleagues cowards for not allowing for this eviction moratorium to extend, people don't even understand, and I don't even know if she understands, that she is nothing more than a pawn. She is nothing more than a political weapon to wield at the people, to wield at the White House, to get them to do things by force, by emotionally manipulating her and then having her emotionally manipulate the people. They can shove through their agenda without anybody getting in the way of it. So they go on the steps of the Capitol and they cry and they do photo ops and they do IG lives and they complain and cry and tug at your heartstring. 6 million people are gonna get. They haven't been paying rent for maybe a year. What have they been doing with that money? What have they been doing as they've been collecting, not paying their bills? Meanwhile, you see consumer goods and purchases of consumer goods skyrocketing across the board. People buying sneakers, sporting equipment, sporting clothing and apparel. This money is going somewhere and it's not going to their rent. In all of that time that they've been collecting this year, they could have set aside some cash to pay the money that they agreed to pay. And then after crying and moaning, the Center for Garbage Control extends the moratorium for another 3 months. And it's just like, first of all, what gives the Center for Garbage Control even the right to do that? Is this even legal? It just kicks the can down the road, dealing yet another, perhaps fatal death blow to these independent landlords that have been working and struggling this whole time, just like everybody else. And then what happens next? What happens next is that massive, large institutional investors scoop up all of these properties that would have helped your average mom and pop gain a little bit of cash on the side, build some family wealth, build some family legacy that they could pass on to their kids, build an instrument of them building cash flow. Those institutional investors come in and they buy those properties out for cash. They have huge amounts of money, huge legal teams where they can collect all of that rental assistance money from the government because they have the legal teams to do so. and they can steal these properties from all these mom and pop investors that worked so hard to get them. As these mom and pop investors have their back up against a wall, and in many cases have no choice but to sell, this facilitates a massive wealth shift. This independent instrument that allows these mom and pops to have extra cash on the side to financially stabilize themselves. Now it goes to this massive corporation with large shareholders that can then cut down the quality of the properties, can cut down the amount of maintenance that gets done, can treat those landlords with less human, with being even less human to them. And what happens? All of that money gets shifted towards the top. The wealth shift is happening and they're begging for it. This creates a massive loss for individual and smaller landlords. By consolidating all the property ownership into these massive conglomerates, they have more political pull, they have more financial pull, and what can they do? They can raise all the rents across all their properties. They can treat people with less care than the individual landlords would. And instead of having individual independent wealth spread across many, many households, you have it focused and centralized into a hand of a small group of investors, a small group of very powerful people with political pull all around the world. And thus continues the massive wealth shift. This is what they're doing. This is why they're doing it. And this is yet another example of how they're stealing the independence and power from your everyday American citizen and centralizing it into the hands of a few, into the hands of the elite. Why do you think they love Ocasio? Why do you think they give her a platform? Why do you think they give her the airtime? They're not stupid. They understand that they can emotionally manipulate the people using this person that's supposedly fighting for the little guy. That's the perfect tool. That's the perfect weapon of the big guy to make the little guy think that the big guy's fighting for them. That's how they emotionally manipulate you. They use her as a pawn. They prop her up. They give her airtime. They broadcast her around the world. Look, she's fighting for you. When the reality is she's doing the exact opposite of what the people think she's doing. They do not put her there by coincidence. These people are intelligent. And if you think that anything is coincidence and not by design, you're not paying attention.